My name is Marc Hoffeditz, and I'm the Resource Sharing Program Manager for the Boston Library Consortium. I'm joined here with my colleague, Debra Denault at Index Data. And today we're going to talk about a unique use of Hyku in the context of a controlled digital lending program that the BLC is looking to launch this fall. So to kick things off, I'd like to set the groundwork around CDL for those that might not be as familiar with the practice. So controlled digital lending involves the digitization of a print resource and then sharing it electronically with digital rights management. CDL is intended to replicate the loaning of a physical item within a digital medium. In line with that definition, there are three core principles to CDL as described by the 2018 white paper on controlled digital lending of library books. One, focusing on ownership, that the library must own a legal copy of the physical book by purchase or gift. Two, focusing on the ratio of owned materials. So the library must maintain an own to loan ratio and cannot lend any more copies than it legally owns. So say that you had 3 print copies of a book, you would be able to lend 2 print copies and 1 digital copy via CDL. You could lend 3 digital copies and no print copies, just as long as you're only lending the number that you own legally in print. And finally, focusing on the controls, as I mentioned. The libraries must use technical measures to ensure that the digital file cannot be copied or redistributed. So with interest increasing over the last several years, a group of innovators worked to create the statement on using controlled digital lending as a mechanism for interlibrary loan back in the fall of 2021. And it was really developed to do 3 things. 1, to increase the awareness of CDL in the context of interlibrary loan. 2, to affirm libraries' rights to use CDL. And 3, to improve services that are provided by the resource sharing community by ensuring that libraries and consortia are operating under the same assumptions and principles. There are 10 foundational statements within the document, but we've highlighted 3 here. 1, that interlibrary loan is a foundational congressionally protected library practice within the United States, at least. CDL is a modern method of lending that replicates the library's right to loan legally acquired physical materials, as I mentioned earlier. And finally, that CDL builds upon a lot of the existing infrastructure and best practices that currently exist for the temporary lending of library materials that's seen via interlibrary loan. So the BLC was eager to investigate what it would look like to implement controlled digital lending for interlibrary loan within a consortial context. So after a year of investigation, a working group of our membership created a report that's certainly worth reading, and there are kind of 3 main takeaways from the report. 1, that CDL is basically an extension of existing resource sharing practices for lending materials for a limited period of time. 2, that at the moment of this report, the technology market was really failing to meet what libraries needed to be able to implement controlled digital lending. And finally, that taking the consortial approach would be the best option for us to scale both impact and investment. Which leads us to Project ReShare. Project ReShare was the obvious choice for BLC to move forward with our aspirations for many of the reasons you see here. 1, it's a library-led development organization, and also the governance structure was far more representative than a lot of the other proprietary options on the market. It's an open source software that exists primarily to support consortial resource sharing. Very helpful as we were trying to implement consortial CDL for ILL. And the ability to scale the solution to meet the different needs of our libraries. So to accelerate this development, BLC's board of directors committed $100,000 to accelerate the development of CDL capabilities within Project ReShare alongside MCLS and many other in-kind contributions. So how does the ReShare CDL MVP work? I'm going to pass over to my colleague, Debra, who's going to walk through the kind of overall workflow and then specifically where Hyku will fit into this. So take it away, Debra.
Thank you. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm having issues with my earbuds. All good? Okay. So if you want to go to the next slide, Mark. So the way that CDL works within ReShare is for those libraries that are participating, in this case, the Boston Library Consortium, we've ingested all of their records into a shared repository that we've indexed and patrons have access to. Through that discovery, patrons can send a request into ReShare for a particular title to request it digitally. In Boston Library Consortium's case, they only do CDL, so they don't have to worry about their patrons selecting whether they want a print or a digital copy. They all come in as potential digital requests. We make sure that the request, that we can find a lender for the request, and we ensure that the library that is potentially going to lend the request has the item checked in and on the shelf. This becomes very important for own-to-loan ratio, which is important for keeping CDL, what's the word I'm thinking of, legally, to legally do CDL. We find the potential lender, we send it to them, and they then have, if they do not have the document being requested or the book being requested already scanned, they would scan the document, upload it into Hyku. So Hyku is really our storage for all of the scanned books that will be used to loan digitally. If it's already there and the document's available, the Hyku, the staff provides the URL to the document in Hyku to the patron through ReShare. The patron then gets the URL via a My Account access, which is they have to authenticate to get into, and that provides security for them to then be able to hit that link and access the document. So what did we do? So in ReShare started out as just handling returnables. And so we added a new state model in ReShare for electronic returnables to be able to do CDL. We modeled it on the own-to-loan through checkout to special patrons in the LSP. So that's using existing NCIP logic, and that allows us then, let's say, for example, in a consortia of 10 libraries, and 3 of the libraries each owned a given title, and there's that one digital copy. So in CDL, you could have 3 given loans at a time, 3 physical, 2 physical, 1 digital, 2 digital, 1 physical, but we always have to make sure that we never break that own-to-loan ratio. So by doing the loan, own-to-loan through checkout, what happens is when a lending library says, yes, I can loan this, they check out their item to sequester it so that any other patron searching on it would see that that item's not available. So that keeps us in an own-to-loan, that legal own-to-loan ratio. We added a whole new My Account function to ViewFind, which is the discovery used with ReShare to be able to show digital and other loans to the patron. And the big part is we worked with Hyku on 2 big things: to add a CDL work type with access restrictions and a IIIF viewer, and then added a document level authorization to Hyku so that only the patron who requested that material under their ID is able to then log in and access that document, so that central to the CDL philosophy, that an item cannot be copied or redistributed, that both of the 2 pieces that we worked with Hyku to develop meet those needs. So just taking a look, this is the staff view of ReShare, not ReShare, sorry, of Hyku for ReShare. So it really is not significantly different than the staff view for libraries that use Hyku for other digital repositories. We come in, we add a new work, we describe it, we upload the files. One of the things that makes the CDL work type a little bit different is that we always, instead of making the visibility public that many institutions do for their digital repositories, we keep it private, because if we made it public, then anybody could grab a hold of the URL that was sent to the patron and have access to that material. That's not good for CDL. And so the works are always kept private, and it's through that and in combination of using a specific type of access point, specifically a IIIF viewer, that allows us to then use the authentication piece that we put in with Hyku. So here's just a couple of other pieces for our, when we come in, our available work types. There's a new CDL work type that was added. So that is something that when a library is using Hyku for CDL and ReShare, they would select this as their work type. And the biggest one probably of all, is that instead of using the default PDF viewer, pdf.js, we actually use a universal viewer. So we've got that selected so that we're using a IIIF viewer, and it basically prevents any ability to copy or download or share the URL with another a patron. So that's very important, because you don't want that. That's something that is completely not allowed with CDL. And here is an example of the supply app in ReShare. So this would be where a lending library through Hyku needs to supply material. So we see here that the item has been sequestered. So they've done the process of filling the request to sequester it. The item's been checked out in their local ILS. And now the enter URL to fill digital loan is where they would take the URL from Hyku and add it into this field here to fill the digital loan. And so here's a copy of work in Hyku that we loaded up for our, when we were doing our pilot program with BLC. So we have a book here, Alice in Wonderland. You can see it's private and deposited, and the staff view can see it. And at the very top is the URL that'll be used to copy into the field to fill the loan in ReShare. And so there's that URL right up just before the question mark. So it's taking the unique ID of that a digital object in Hyku. They copy that into the URL. And this is MVP. We envision in phase 2 and 3 to be able to have an automated process to do this. But for MVP, the staff just manually copy that in. They click fill loan, and that will then fill the loan, send this URL through ISO 18626 message to the requesting library, and then the patron has access to be able to go in to their My account in Discovery to then be able to click on the link to access the document. If somebody somehow hijacks that URL, whether it be a staff member or it be somebody else that gets a hold of the URL to that Alice in Wonderland digital object, a digital book in Hyku, they will be presented with a "you must be logged in first" message. So this prevents anybody from illegally accessing that document, which breaks the CDL model. So they would have to log in using the name and password. Notice that this is the real estate that we're on here is actually the Boston Library Consortium discovery page. So this is not logging into Hyku. We know that even though the address is to Hyku, that it's really that the authentication has to go through the patron who requested it in ReShare. So they would have to enter in their username or password, or if they are coming from an institutional login that has SSO, they would select their institution, put that in. And so at the time, I can actually show you this live now, but here is the Your account with the digital loans is a new feature that we added, and the lists all the active digital loans for a given patron, and they can click on that retrieve digital loan. It's a hyperlink that would then take them to the document in Hyku. And when they come in, they would be brought into the book. Notice that nowhere on this IIIF viewer is there the ability to download the item or to share a URL to anybody. So this basically locks down access to the material to the user who's logged in. Now, I suppose if they wanted to, they could take the 639 pages in this book and like screenshot them, but it would be a long and laborious process to do that. So, and I think that, yeah.
So
I was just going to say.
Oh, go ahead, Deborah. Sorry.
I was just going to say, do we have enough time? I could actually show the live link if you want, but up to everybody.
Oh yeah, you have plenty of time. You have 9 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I can stop sharing.
Okay. So I'm just, before I share, I'm going to get this set up. Okay. So everybody should see the Boston Library Consortium discovery on my screen right now. And I'm just going to minimize us to show the full real estate. So this is the discovery for Boston Library Consortium for ReShare. And if I'm a patron and I want to access my digital loans, my control digital loans, I have to log in. And so here I've got, for ease of convenience, the username that we've placed these requests under. So once I log in, I now have a Your Account option that displays in the discovery. So going to that Your Account, here's the digital loans, and I've got 4 items in this list. And in fact, if I scroll down, this was the one that we placed the other day when we were preparing for this presentation. And so you can see here the retrieve digital loan is hyperlinked and will bring us, if you notice it down in the bottom left hand corner, I know it's very small, but it's linking us to the blc.hyku commons instance. And so when clicking on it, it opens up in a new tab. And it's deciding what it wants to do. Yes, so it's waiting. So we give this sort of, we're redirecting you as it does the authentication. And then once the authentication is done, and of course, because it's a demo, it's a little bit slower, but it does eventually bring the patron in, brings up the viewer. And mind you, this is a large book, so it takes a few minutes to bring all of those pages because they're independent pages that get pulled together to represent the document. It's usually not this slow, but it could be my new internet. Okay, this is embarrassing. We have worked, we did, one of the things that I will say that we've had some issues with, and I don't think it's just using this for CDL, but just in even with smaller documents, is a lag time in being able to call up all of the particular pages, especially for large works for display. So we have talked to developers about that. But here the work has now been loaded, and notice I can change the way I look at it and look at 2 pages, 1 pages, 4 pages, but nowhere can I essentially copy or download or share the material with any other people. Of course, I do have this. I could copy this, but again, if anybody else got hold of it, or if I sent it to anybody, when they logged in, they would have to provide their authentication. And so the patron can just scroll through all the different pages. And once the book's called up, it goes through very quickly, and then they can have access to their work. So I'm going to, when I'm finished, I can just close that, come back to digital loans, back to my account. And when I'm finished, I log out for the day. And what will happen is once the due date has reached for the loan. So when the loan was filled by the lending library, a due date was assigned. And when that due date is reached, access the entry in My Digital Loans goes away, because the due date has been reached and they no longer have access to that particular item. So that restricts that. And I just wanted to show you that because it's kind of the cool part.
Thanks, Deborah. I will close this out really quickly. So part of the work that we're continuing to do in the CDL world is funded by an IMLS grant to develop a CDL toolkit. I will send that along in the chat. But if you have a couple minutes to help us out, we're looking to gain some information to develop a toolkit to help other libraries and library consortia adopt the practice and hopefully learn a little bit more about what it takes to implement this at scale. And with that, we are happy to take any questions that you might have.